of what we tell public that air is also affected by plastic.
Air pollution in India alone is killing almost 2 million people, more than 2 million people, in fact, every year. In 2019, there was a famous Lancet study which had gone viral, and then again in 2022, where pollution killed 2.3 million Indians in 2019. And of course, we've seen trends over the last couple of years that this is only unfortunately increasing.
Hello and welcome everyone to Planet versus Plastics podcast series brought to you by Ep.20. I'm your host Rumit Walia in this insightful journey for a world free from plastic pollution. Today's episode is air versus plastics, and to talk on this special intersection, we have with us Mr. Abhiir Bhala, who is an amazing environmentalist and a My Future My Verse ambassador.
But before we dive in, here's a quick reminder. The views expressed here are for general informational purposes, and we encourage you to do your own research. We're here to spark ideas, inspire change, and navigate the complexities of plastic pollution.
Welcome, Abhi, to the Planet versus Plastics podcast. And very first thing, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? I know you do a lot, but what would you say when it comes to air pollution and plastics and all the great work you do?
Hi, Rumit. It's great to be here. Yes, well, I wear many hats, but a short introduction of me would be that I work as a sustainability and public policy consultant. I've been working as an environmentalist since I was in class six, so it's been almost 11 years. I started off as a climate activist, and I was working on, a lot of on-ground campaigns, and subsequently I was freelancing. And now, as of the last 1 year, I've been working with one of the big four companies on sustainability and public policy. Uh, and I'm also a My Future, My Voice ambassador for Earth Day International. Over the last, I think, year or 2 years, it's been a great experience to collaborate with Earth Day on so many initiatives. One, of course, a key focus area for me has been air pollution, and I'm really excited today to examine how the diverse yet overlapping, the different yet overlapping worlds of air pollution and plastic pollution somehow come together to exacerbate the issue.
Yeah. So let's dive down into the first question itself, which is the topic is air versus plastics. What we are trying with this podcast is several intersections of plastic, how it is affecting daily lives and air, which is, 100% of the population on the earth is affected by the air because it's the first thing we breathe, air and water. So, how is air pollution connected to plastic? What are the sources, maybe disposal or manufacturing, or how does it actually contributes to? Because there's a lot of been research going on and still not very concrete in terms of what we tell public that air is also affected by plastic.
Right. Well, I want to start with a few numbers because that's how it's usually the most impactful, right? Air pollution in India alone is killing almost 2 million people, more than 2 million people, in fact, every year. In 2019, there was a famous Lancet study which had gone viral, and then again in 2022, um, where pollution killed 2.3 million Indians in 2019. And of course, we've seen trends over the last couple of years that this is only unfortunately increasing. And I believe that India recently was given the infamous title of really embarrassing and unfortunate title of being the cancer capital of the world. And as I'm sure you're aware, air pollution and also microplastics both are key contributors to are key causes of cancer. um, the other number that I wanted to share is the fact that, today uh, we're reaching a point where everywhere we go, there is a quantum of plastic which just seems to be growing, right? Whether it's in our oceans, whether it's in our landfills, whether it's on our roads. Um, and there's a very interesting study which, we're talking about moving towards net zero these days. We're talking about moving to renewable energy, and reducing dependency on fossil fuels. So there's a very interesting study by, I think, CIEL, which said that, if current trends continue, plastics will account for 20% of oil consumption alone. So 20% of oils will come, just from the manufacturing of plastic. Um, the third statistic, which always is impressive to me, is the fact that, or rather shocking to me, is that only 16% of our plastics today are being recycled, right? Um,
Yes.
we in our day-to-day lives, we see corporates and maybe schools every now and then doing plastic collection drives, at the end of every month or once in a couple of months. But in spite of all of those initiatives, and you have corporate giants like Pepsi and Coca-Cola and Amazon, which are making their own efforts when it comes to collecting plastic. But in spite of all of that, it's just 16% which is being recycled. And that takes me to the air pollution point, because if you look at ocean garbage, or if you look at even landfills, it's plastic bags which are around 14%, plastic bottles are around 11 or 12%, plastic containers are 10%. So you get where I'm going, right? It's
Yeah.
plastic coming from all sources of our life, whether it's food, whether it's literally anything, packaging, anything. Um, and that's where the air pollution link comes in, because what happens when plastics are going to these landfills, right? In Delhi, even across North India, we've been hearing reports for the last 5 6 years that our landfills are catching fire. Now, hopefully, those are organic fires as a result of the methane buildup in these landfills. Hopefully, nobody is doing them deliberately, but landfills have everything, right? Unfortunately, we're not
Yeah.
at a mature stage of waste segregation in our landfills. And when they're overburdened, when there's an excess methane collection, they can spontaneously combust, and then these go on for days and days at end. And obviously, there is a lot of plastic in those landfills. Now, when plastic burns, because it's an oil product, most obviously, but even otherwise, the key pollutant which is released is black carbon, which is the worst form of carbon for our lungs, because black carbon is actually something that accumulates. Very often, the dust that you see, for those of us who are privileged enough to have an air purifier, if we're cleaning the purifier, the dust comes out, but the black carbon often is absorbed
Yes.
by the purifier, because that's how sticky it is, and of course, burning plastics releases a noxious cocktail of chemicals. So think VOCs, similar to chlorofluorocarbons. Think about the overwhelming smell we get when our houses are painted. Similar to that, those are all VOCs. So when we talk about air pollution, very often we only think about PM 2.5, PM 10. We think about carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases, but people fail to talk about VOCs, right? And
Yes.
when plastic is burnt, it releases a lot of these VOCs, which, unlike PM 2.5 and carbon, which affects our lungs, VOCs actually goes and hits our brains, our heart, our other organs, and temporarily reduces their capability, and in cases of long-term exposure, has sustained damage on some of these organs. So yeah, that's the basic, lay of the plastic and air conundrum. And
Yeah.
obviously, it's
At the
it's it's a
same time, I
massive
would
issue.
say it's very sad also that microplastic, and I say this in every podcast. I mean, it has been found in our bloods, even in human sperm now, and babies like mother's milk, even in the babies which are not born yet. And now, when we talk
True.
about air pollution, how it is connecting the VOCs, it's not just targeting some of your organs, it's also decreasing your efficiency of working, let's say, or maybe
Oh yeah,
doing
absolutely.
innovations in a way. So it's affecting your mind and heart, as you say. So I think plastic has not only captured the planet, it has captured the whole human body, and it's doing the worst thing that it can do. So it's like a devil in our lives, which we are only growing.
Yeah, I mean,
And that is
we
what,
used to
yeah,
talk about air pollution being a silent killer, and
yeah,
microplastics are no different, right? It's in our fish, it's in our water, it's in our food, it's in our organs, and plastics can be seen unlike the air. Even some
yes, I mean, it's
microplastics can
right
be seen
in
even
front of
without a
you. Yeah,
microscope, and we're still
it's still doing that.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's true.
No,
So,
exactly
Abhi,
right.
what,
Yeah,
yeah, what I would like to also, if you can talk a little bit about, in all these podcasts, majorly what we have been mentioning is the problems. But you have worked on the air pollution with the DMRC. You have worked with several other organizations on this. In fact, I mean, youth is one of your forte, one of your focus areas. So how can we make this connect? Because as you rightly said, when we talk about air pollution, we miss so many things. For example, the microplastics and the plastics that has been burned in these landfills. So how do we make this connect with the young generation? And how do we, apart from just educating them, involve them in doing this change, like creating this a movement that it this whole scenario can be changed from the source, let's say. Because as you very rightly said, the corporations are
right.
doing, trying to do their bit, but what about a movement that comes from the younger generation? How do we go about that in your perception?
Right. Well, there was this interesting yet somewhat imperfect study which I read about a couple of years ago, which came from Harvard, right? Which spoke about it spoke about how young people specifically need to be at the forefront of societal action, and more specifically, it listed 9 measures which could lead to the reduction of emissions by 20% if just we do it, right? So very often we see that we're in this catch 22 where society is blaming institutions, institutions are blaming societal inaction,
Yeah,
and nothing is coming out of it in the process. um, and unfortunately what then happens is, to come out of this catch 22, this study was sort of written, and it says that if 1 billion if 1 billion people, which as we know is less than the population of India alone, if just 1 billion people do their bit for the planet, we can cut carbon emissions by 20%, on our own.
wow,
No governments, no corporates, nothing. Right? Because people very often say, you know, uh, it's climate change is such a big issue. It's something that we can't, work on alone. But this study actually refutes that, and this study mentions 9 clear steps, which we can take towards solving that issue. And of course, I mean, some of the simpler ones are things we've heard about in our day-to-day lives, whether it's carrying a cloth bag similar to the one hanging behind you, carrying a
yeah,
cloth bag to our marketplaces, whether it's using public transport, whether it's minimizing our electricity consumption either through energy efficient appliances or through renewable energies, or through renewable energy. So some of those basics, right? But I think most importantly, to answer your question more directly, young people become relevant because we have the voice and the ability to say things that others and our elders don't, right? um, when you're working with a company or when you're working with a political party, there are some things you can say and some things you can't. You have to sort of toe an organizational line. But we as young people can speak our mind, and in doing so we can speak truth to power, or at the very least hold people accountable, right? If you ask me, um, 80, 70 to 80% of the change has to be brought by institutions. But the crucial missing piece of that puzzle is the fact that the first 20 to 30% has to be brought on by society led by young people, right? Until that first 20 to 30% happens, we can't catalyze the next 70 to 80%. We have to be the precursors, because I say this example often, right? What does a rational politician want? A rational politician wants votes. So it's
yeah,
only when society demonstrates to politicians that climate is a voting issue will they actually talk about it and they'll care about it. Because until then, they have no incentive to talk about it in their rallies, and thereby If they don't talk about it in their rallies, there's no one to hold them accountable, right? um, so it's us through our own ways who have to demonstrate to the government, and to corporates for that matter, that we care about this issue. And we have to be the first movers and then sort of catalyze change overall.
That's wonderful. And I mean, I agree with you. The younger generation has to be the foundation leading the impact and the change. And then later on, the corporation can definitely build up the whole building. But the foundation have to be very strong. So we're almost at the end, Abir, for this
True,
podcast. And
true, very
I would
true.
like to ask this final question very quick. What would be that one immediate action plan, or let's say one small action that you would like to tell audience to just take right away to solve both the problem, let's say the plastic pollution and the air pollution?
Well, we've established the link between the two. So I think if we solve plastics, we'll be helping the air pollution cause as well. But one quick suggestion that I would have for our audience is, we talk about plastic bags, we talk about packaging, but very often we forget our water bottles. And as you and I were discussing the other day, I'm very, very inspired by this initiative that the Andaman and Nicobar government's islands the Union Territories government has sort of taken, which is that they've banned water bottles of 250 ml, 500 ml, and 1 liter. You only get 2 liter water bottles. And in the process, what that does is, of course, it's reducing the quantum of plastic being consumed and trashed, but it's also creating a user block, right? It's
Hmm.
discouraging people. Nobody wants to carry around a 2 liter water
Yeah.
bottle. It's heavy, it's bulky, it takes up
Yes.
space, and it's just awkward to carry around, right? So it's encouraging people to carry their own water bottles, and it's a perfect example of policy change, but also societal change coming together as one. So that's just a short insight that I would like to mention.
That's wonderful, Abhi. Thank you so much for talking to us on this very interesting intersection of plastic pollution, let's say. And as the theme is planet versus plastic, I think we all need to be in this together.